I think Matt Rhule got it wrong. I just think that he doesn't necessarily get it. And I think highly of Matt Rhule. I'm not a Matt Rhule hater. I think Nebraska is going to get steadily better under his leadership. I think, and whether they get back to the heights of the Tom Osborne, Bob Devaney era, I don't know. But I think that Nebraska can continually be a 9 to 10 win team every year under Matt Rhule, because I believe that he's a really, really, really good football coach. But he said something in a press conference about their spring practice schedule and all of those things that I don't think is the right way to think about it. I don't think it's the right way to go about it. And if you haven't seen what Matt Rhule said, here is a conversation that he had at a press conference when he was asked about whether or not the Nebraska spring game is going to be on TV. This is what he had to say.
Yeah, I don't know that yet, but I'll be honest with you, I highly doubt it. And I think it's really fundamentally, I hate to say it like this, it's really because, last year we're one of the more televised. We were one of the more televised spring games, and I dealt with a lot of people offering our players a lot of opportunities after that. So to go out and bring in a bunch of new players and then showcase them for all the other schools to watch, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The word tampering doesn't exist anymore. It's just absolute free, open, common market. And so I don't necessarily want to open up to the outside world. I don't want these guys all being able to watch our guys and say, wow, he looks like a pretty good player. Let's go get him. So, but I don't know yet. I don't know anything. I thought it was important that, we at least started to broach that subject of it not being televised. Yet at the same time, I do want to show off our players in some way. So what exactly it'll be yet, I have not worried about anything other than recruiting right now, both the portal and into the 26 class.
I'll give him credit for being upfront and honest about why, because if the Nebraska spring game wasn't going to be on TV, there would be questions about why? Why is the Nebraska spring game not on TV? And the answer to those questions is likely something that would be a detriment to Matt Rhule's program, because if Nebraska is not going to be on TV, the question is going to be, why aren't they? And the answer very well could be because they're not interesting and relevant enough to garner a slot on TV. But I think there is some backwards thinking there, in that it's 2025, man. Everybody knows about everybody. Every college football program knows about the top prospects, the guys who you would be willing to tamper with or be willing to try to entice into the portal. It's not a secret, and I don't think anybody's going to find that information out. They're not going to see a player at a Power 4 school like Nebraska and say, yo, who the hell's that kid? They're going to be, everybody is somewhat aware of everybody. I don't think that Nebraska is hiding some diamond in the rough that they are now working out to getting prepared to play in the spring game, and then magically somebody's going to see and be like, get that kid some NIL money. It just doesn't work like that. So it's not the old school way of recruiting where you might find a player that lives in the middle of nowhere that you might not even have their high school on your recruiting map or whatever. Those days are, for the most part, gone. Now, the argument against that is, well, Josh Allen only had... Yes, there are exceptions to the rule, but the rule pretty much is that anybody that's at Nebraska is going to be on the radar of every other Power 4 school or every other Group of 5 school that would say, hey, maybe this guy's not playing that much. Maybe we can entice him to come here, etc. And I understand the apprehension from Matt Rhule. Nebraska lost 40 players in the transfer portal, and they obviously don't want to have to replace 40 players in the transfer portal all the time. But seeing Nebraska's spring game on the Big Ten Network isn't going to be the difference between somebody going, you know what? I watched his YouTube film. I watched his huddle. I watched tape on him on 24/7. I watched all of this film on him. I watched him as a high school prospect, saw him at camp, went to his high school games. We just didn't think he was going to be good enough, so we didn't offer him. But now that I saw him in the Nebraska spring game, let's see if we can't get him here. I just don't think that's going to be the thing that pushes another program over the top to get somebody into the portal. I think you have to worry about how this looks to recruits today, because for better or worse, and there are a lot of arguments for why it's worse, by the way, today's college football recruit is part of the me generation. They don't care how they can help Matt Rhule's career, Matt Rhule's program. All they care about is how can Matt Rhule and Nebraska help me. And that is fair because they have all of the leverage. It's not the X's and O's, it's the Jimmies and Joes. And so the Jimmies and Joes have taken the power. And that's okay, but you have to deal with that in the right ways. And so if I'm a high-profile Jimmy and Joe and I hear a head coach, a potential head coach of mine say, I'm going to do everything I can to shield the exposure from this player because I don't want other teams to be exposed to his talent, athleticism, and his ability to play football good, I don't know that I respond to that really well. I understand that Matt Rhule's got to do what's best for him and the Nebraska program. I get it. And if he views the idea that Nebraska's spring game not being on TV is the best thing for their program, more power to you. But in that same clip, he talks about, I haven't thought a whole lot about this because I've been focused on recruiting. And you know what he said immediately after that? I've been focused on recruiting, the transfer portal, and the class of 2026. So he put transfer portal above the high school class because he's doing the same things that he's accusing everybody else of doing. That he wants to say, there's no tampering anymore. It's just the free market, baby. Well, if that's the case, there are two options. There are two things you can do if that's the world you live in. Bitch about it or go out and use it to your advantage. So I think you got it kind of backwards because this is unmistakably Matt Rhule sitting here kind of bitching about it. Don't complain about it. Turn that baby into your oyster and shuck it. If you think that legitimately there are no repercussions for tampering, then tamper with people. Get the best players on your program. Because if that's the name of the game, and make no mistake about it, that is the name of the game, and you feel like nobody's ever going to get in trouble or get caught for doing the wrong thing, you might as well go do the wrong thing. You might as well be at the forefront about it rather than sit there and complain about how it is. Because if you hate change, if you don't like change, you're going to hate extinction. And that's kind of the name of the game at this point, is you're going to have to change, you're going to have to evolve, and you're going to have to be okay with it. And I think that Matt Rhule is kind of that, of the progressive mindset, a little bit of like, I'm okay with these changes. I'm okay with this. And then you just get to this where it's like, hey, I bet you I could sit down and go through the Nebraska roster right now and find a YouTube video for every player on their roster with their high school film, with maybe even some of their college film right now. I would bet you decent money that I could find recruiting tapes of every single player. And if I was even remotely interested in plucking somebody out of Nebraska, I don't need the Nebraska spring game on the Big Ten network to set me over the top. Recruiting doesn't exist in a vacuum. It doesn't get to a point where, like, okay, this kid signed with Nebraska. Let me flush everything I've ever known about that kid, or make no mental note or keep any record of him in a database anywhere ever. It's not how it works. And I know that Matt Rhule knows that. I know that he knows that. And so for this to be kind of the one thing that he's going to come out and grandstand about and say, like, hey, we are not going to televise our spring game because it doesn't serve us. If that's how you feel, more power to you. Now, they go on and say, like, this, by the way, the spring game is not canceled. It's not like they're not going to have a spring game, but they're going to do something on Saturday, April 26th. It's just not likely to be televised. So they're going to have an in-person event, which is just kind of like, I don't know if Connor Stallions taught you anything, but the fact that it ain't on TV don't matter. If people are that committed to trying to recruit your kids into the portal, they'll buy the $15 ticket to show up to the damn game to scout them. They'll make the trip to Lincoln to watch your guys. So not putting it in front of like 200,000 people on. Hey, if Nebraska were to put their YouTube game or their spring game on YouTube, they might get more people watching it than if they put it on a Big Ten network. So you're not like keeping even the right people away from watching your players. You're keeping the greater college football world, the greater college football fan, the average person skimming through the channels that happens to see football on a Saturday on the Big Ten Network away from watching your program. So I don't think it does anything with the intended the intended mission is I don't want to showcase our players to other programs. I get that. But if you stop at, I don't want to showcase our players, that's a bad spot to be in. And also, if you think that was the difference between your players getting big offers last year to enter the transfer portal was your spring game being televised. Is that projecting a little bit? Is that maybe telling on yourself that, like, hey, we started watching spring games. We watch spring games on ESPN, SEC Network, ACC Network, other Big Ten Network schools. We watch their spring games. I don't think that like somebody told him, hey, by the way, the difference was we saw your guy in the spring game. It's probably much more likely that they were watching other people's spring games and then went, well, wait, are other programs doing this to us? And when the answer to that question is yeah, not a great spot to be. I think overall, I don't know that this accomplishes anything other than makes you seem just a little bit paranoid and secure people who are in a position of strength, people who feel really good about what they're doing, where they're going, etc., generally aren't paranoid. And so I hope that Matt Rhule comes to the realization that he shouldn't be paranoid about this, because I think Nebraska is not far away from being back to really relevant in the Big Ten title race, in the college football playoff race. And I think there are a lot of people who want to see them there. And I don't know that not having their spring game on TV helps them reach that level. But that's just how I view it. I want to know your thoughts. Do you think that spring games are maybe going the way of the dodo on TV because of the transfer portal era? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. I appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you get all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.